You're listening to the Wrigleyville Nation podcast. Here's your hosts, Jeremy and Pat.
Hello and welcome to the Wrigleyville Nation podcast. This is episode 389 of the podcast. My name is Jeremy Deemer and I'll be your host. And I'm joined as always by my co-host. He's my cousin and he comes to us high atop Wrigleyville tonight. How's it going, Pat?
It's going, Jeremy. It's going.
We will dive into the road trip. We will talk about the month of September and what's going on with all things Cubs. To help us do that, longtime friend of the show, you can follow him on the social media platforms. He's on X at the Blog Finds. You know him from his work at Awful Announcing. Matt Clapp, thanks for taking time out to talk Cubs with us tonight.
Thanks, guys. Great to be here again.
Yeah, always a good time. Even when the Cubs are having a rough go. They went 2-4 this week. I can't remember what we did on our predictions last week, but I think we were very
I believe
4-2
was the prediction.
4-2, 3-3. We felt good, but man, they were swept by the San Francisco Giants in San Francisco. And then they took 2 of 3 from the Rockies, but man, had a chance to win all 3. Let's
anytime you only take 2 out of 3 from the Rockies are outperforming their season behavior. So
let's start with the series in San Francisco. Matt, we saw a 5-2 loss, 12-3, and 4-3. Your thoughts on the series in the aggregate, and then we'll get into the games.
Yeah, the Giants series, the offense just didn't do anything. I mean, it's too much of what we've seen for the last 6-7 weeks now, especially there. I mean, the offense didn't do enough for one, and I think the pitching staff, you hoped that they would do a bit better against a lineup that wasn't too daunting on paper, and especially in a park where it's hard to get runs. So, I mean, that was just a bad series all around. The funny thing is I viewed the Angels and the Giants series pretty evenly, difficulty-wise entering them. And so you came away with a great sweep in Anaheim, and then you get swept in San Francisco. Like, if you told me they went 3-3 of those before that, I'd be fine with it. But the way it happened was pretty disappointing. And then, the Rockies series, like, taking 2 of 3 on the road is always fine, even against one of the worst teams in history. Coors is just such a circus. But, yesterday, the last 2 games, you wanted to see more from the offense. It's just hard to win games at Coors Field, no matter who no matter how good the Rockies are. Rockies are scoring, but 4 or 5 runs, 3 runs. Like, you got to be able to put up 6, 7, 8 runs there to give yourself a chance. Like, it's just so hard to pitch there. It's so hard to have run prevention. Like, Boyd was a little shaky, but I thought he was a little better yesterday than his line said compared to a couple of his recent starts. And you get 3-4 runs allowed from your starting pitcher at Coors Field. Like, this offense should be able to give you a chance to win the game. So that was disappointing. The Friday game at Coors, I really liked what I saw from the offense. And honestly, I thought that they could have scored like 15, 20 runs on a different day. Just some tough hitting luck, and they still got 11, I think. But aside from the Angels series in that game, it was just kind of the same story from the offense, where a couple of guys that you really need to get going still aren't going. Yeah.
Yeah, we had 2 Boyd starts that did not result in wins this week, which is always tough for this team.
Yeah.
Pat, what do you think? This is, like Matt said, a better on the peripherals for Boyd, but still not what you want to see, right?
clearly the last 4 starts or so, or like really 4 out of the last 6, whatever, how you want to look at it, 5 out of the last 7. He hasn't been as sharp as he's been early there, because he was amazingly sharp, frankly. He was an all-star. I mean, that was great.
Right.
And I think we posited at the beginning of the year that one of the concerns we had with Boyd wasn't that he was a bad pitcher. The question was, how long was he going to hold up? How long was he going to stay healthy? And he stayed healthy all year. So I give him a lot of credit for being able to do that. It's been really impressive. Unfortunately, he's now at, I think, 159.1 innings partially because with all the other starters in and out of the rotation with injuries and other issues, the Cubs have relied on him to go deeper into games than basically anybody, right, for the entire season. So he's on pace right now, at the rate he's going, to pitch more innings than he has in the previous 4 years combined. He's already got more than the last 3 years combined. And that's a lot to ask of somebody, especially when, even as of today, it looks like October baseball is a high likelihood, very high likelihood. And so, yeah, there are concerns with him, and hopefully he's not running out of gas or getting some dead arm period. I harken back to the 2003 season. You remember when Carlos Zambrano just got kind of dead arm like late in the year, and he killed him in the playoffs, right? Like that would have been, if he had been pitching like he had all season, the Cubs would have flown by the Marlins and won the World Series. But anyway, not that we're necessarily at that point right now, but certainly it is something to keep an eye on. Also, simultaneously to that, and I think working with that, is that we've expected Boyd to basically win all the starts. And the reason we've needed him to win all the starts is because we don't have a fifth starter. And every time we seem to get healthy and get a fifth starter, somebody gets hurt. And we'll get into that, I guess, a little bit later. But Boyd has had to carry a lot of the load this year. And so if he doesn't win his start in a week or 2 starts in a week, you go 2-4. It's basically how it works, because the Cubs don't have the depth of pitching where he can lose both his starts and the Cubs are going to somehow win the other 4. I mean, it's just not the way this team's built.
Yeah, Matt, is it are we getting too nervous here? Is this is this something we should be concerned about, or are we like Pat mentioned, just history is making us more concerned than we need to be at this point?
Well, I think it's right to be concerned until it's not an issue. I mean, you kind of count on Boyd to be a frontline pitcher for this team with how it's built. Boyd and Shota and now Horton. So you really, really need that, So the way it's looked the last 4 or 5 starts, like you guys have said, it's just been too shaky, and you need this to be a guy that can go 6, 7 innings and look like a frontline arm for this team to be able to go deep in October.
And that's, I think, the other problem too, Matt, is that you just nailed it. Like, yeah, Shota missed some time, so his arm probably didn't get as much wear and tear as he would have otherwise. But Cade Horton is also at a all-time pitching mark right now. So when you're relying on Boyd and Horton in any kind of a playoff series as your 2 of your 3 starters, and they're both sort of you're in this nervous predicament. Whereas it'd be nice in September if the Cubs could have built up a nice lead and maybe gone to a 6-man rotation or pulled some guys early, but it looks like they're going to have to play all their games here and play them hard. So that's problematic.
Well, we saw what a Colin Ray start looked like in San Francisco right there with everybody teeing off for home runs. You're always worried that that's what too many of the Colin Ray
the Cinderella of the Cubs. We've been waiting for midnight to strike, and a couple of times he's come close, and then he's kind of got better. But lately we're at the point, I think he's got negative WAR now for the season, just to put it in perspective.
Yeah, it's like, I think they were like something like 16-7 in his starts up until last week or something. But I mean, it was more that a lot of those starts were the Cubs scoring a lot of runs, or winning like 8-7 kind of games sometimes. So that could only hold up for so long. So yeah, you get pretty nervous. You just, like you guys have been saying, you just kind of hope that you're going to win the Boyd, Shota, and Horton starts. And the other ones are, you just hope that the pitcher will do enough and that the offense will really step up. So it's hard when now you have Ray, regressing a bit, and Boyd potentially regressing too.
And Taillon back on the 15-day IL, a left groin injury. I didn't. So the. We'll start with you, Matt. What do you think are the actual expectations for Taillon for the rest of the season? This is a second trip to the IL here.
Season ends on September 27th this year, by the way, a little bit earlier than usual, right?
Yeah. So you have a few arms now that you hope can help get through it, but it's like right when your pitching depth was really starting to get nice, and Taillon had actually had a nice start or two. This happens, and I don't know if he was going to for sure be like the number 4 playoff starter, but I would guess that it's probably him, or I don't know, maybe a toss up between him or Assad, but you can't really afford these setbacks at this point. And now it's just going to be another challenge for this rotation. And when you have Boyd innings concerns and you have Horton innings concerns, and yeah, it's going to be another thing for them to overcome.
So we have the other thing on the pitching side before we get to some of the hitters and the roster updates. I had some concern. I watched 2 walk-offs against Palencia this week, one in San Francisco and one in Colorado. When he's striking guys out, it's great, but he always seems to give up a hit or two. And so there's always a couple of guys on, and then he'll get out of it. But when he doesn't get out of it, they lose. And that has, we talked about, when we did our player profile on Carlos Marmol. This is where he would walk a bunch of guys and then get out of it. It always seems like Palencia is give up a couple of hits and then get out of it. And it's just with the back end of the bullpen being as strong as it has been and the middle being as soft as it has been, seeing the back end have any sort of struggles also makes me really nervous for the rest of the season.
Yeah, they need Valencia to be really sharp in the back end. I mean, he's been incredible this season. We weren't even sure if he was going to be someone you could trust to be a part of the bullpen, honestly. And he's been great. But, it's been going on, I would say, for a few weeks, or even some of his successful outings, like you were saying, there would be a hit or two or getting out of traffic, and it's hard to sustain that. So they just consistently need him to miss more bats, I think. There'll be an outing where he strikes out 2 or 3, and then there'll be an outing he doesn't strike out anybody. So that you just need a little bit more consistency, I think, with that game and with his command. Honestly, I'll take my chances with him still, every time out there. But I trust Keller the most. I feel like Keller is kind of the relief ace, and I wouldn't be surprised if we start seeing him get kind of more closery chances. Or I think he's just kind of someone you use like as a relief face whenever it feels like the best situation. But I don't necessarily know if, Palencia should be only the guy in the 9th inning. I think that Palencia, Keller, Thielbar, even like Taylor Rogers and Andrew Kittredge they're all kind of close in reality. And I think you need to just play matchups and see who's fresh. And but they definitely will need Palencia to be more like he was until the last few weeks, regardless if they're going to go deep this year.
I like the idea of not using him in tie games. That seems to be a point of weakness for him. And that'd be a great spot for Keller if they didn't have to use Keller before then, which usually is the case. Because, and by the way, to your original point that Palencia has given them a lot more than we could have anticipated this year, it's true. Because everybody else that we anticipated that would be helpful this year has not been. So most of them are no longer on the team. I did see Porter Hodge make a reappearance like Groundhog Day the other day and just get hit by the pallet and give up 4 base runners in 1 inning and a run. So nothing changes there. But, we had high hopes for him, and you had the Merriweather situation and the Pressey and everybody else. And it's just been a little shop of horrors, but for Palencia. And then, like you say, the Kellers, the Thielbars, some of these other guys who kind of came out of
nowhere, really. Absolutely. I mean, we're just a few months removed from thinking Porter Hodge was the best reliever on the team, and now he's not someone. We don't know if he belongs in the bullpen at all, and he's still working through his issues. He had some better outings recently at Iowa and Coors Field, which is so hard to take anything away from, but still had some of the same command issues. And he's totally a bonus if you get anything from him at this point, I think. One thing I would maybe like to see here in the coming weeks is see what it looks like for Ben Brown to just go 3 to 6 outs instead of these 3 to 5 inning outings. And maybe he's throwing 99 or 100 instead of 96, 97. And maybe his curveball plays better and he doesn't have to worry about seeing a lineup 2 times through. And, I just think that's the kind of thing that they should try to find out in the next few weeks, because maybe that's a weapon. And if he sucks, then forget it. But I think they should be trying out little things like that before we head to the postseason.
That was our goal back in April 2024, for him to be able to be given those opportunities. And for some reason, it just hasn't happened.
Well, let's talk a little bit about the hitting, and we'll start on the positive side of things. A great week for both Dansby Swanson and Ian Happ.
Of course, if you told me there were two guys who are gonna have a big week at Coors Field, those would be the two guys. They're veterans. They're like, I gotta eat, man. This is my time here. Like I've been struggling. I'm gonna go to this place. I'm gonna do the exact same thing I always do, and all my hits are gonna fall in. Congratulations, guys. Now come back to earth in Wrigley Field, where whatever.
Yeah, I mean Swanson had 2 home runs, 7 RBIs. Like he had a big week. Happ, of course, with the Swanson had the 6 RBI game in Colorado, but you had also Ian Happ on the Sunday game hitting the big game tying home run. Just really exciting to see other people in the offense start to pick it up because
Happ is back to an OPS plus of 115. Of course, just like always, it's
set your watch to
strange, circuitous path on how he gets there every year. But here we are once again.
Yeah, he's exactly the player that he always has been.
It came at a good time because I think about a week ago, Twitter had pretty much cut him from the team.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah, everybody was very angry that he was getting like any starts over Owen Caissie or blah blah blah. Before
we get to Owen Caissie, we'll talk about a guy who is struggling in the outfield, and that's Pete Crow Armstrong. We did get a couple of flashes, home run here or there, some power here or there, but overall, his August numbers really struggling.
What are his August numbers, Jeremy?
160 batting average, 216 OBP, and a 230 slug, 446 OPS. This is not the first half numbers.
Matt Clement is better than that.
Does he just need some rest, Matt, or is it just the league catching up to him? What's your take on the recent PCA struggles?
I think it could be a lot of things, really. Honestly, I thought that we would see this kind of stretch maybe a little more earlier in the season. I didn't expect him to just like take off for the whole first half, really. Just because his game has a bit of variance, and he's the kind of guy he swings at so many pitches, and he has some vulnerable areas still with like letter high fastballs and start breaking balls in the dirt. So I honestly thought he would be a little more roller coastery in the first half. But it's kind of weird how it's happened. Kind of plummeted over the last month, like you said. I think like one thing that they should probably do is maybe be a little more selective about when he plays versus left-handed pitching, or at least bat him like 7th or 8th in those games, limit the exposure. Because his defense is always still so important. Sure. And maybe he'll run into a homer. He still has like the threat of a home run or a getting on base and stealing a couple bases. So I get having him in there always, but maybe bat him, 7th, 8th, or maybe even 9th or something rather than, 5th, 6th. I think he'll come around a little bit more versus right-handed pitching. You'll probably at least still see some more homers mixed in. It's been kind of weird how it's just fallen off. He's been missing some meteor pitches that he was hitting earlier in the season for sure. It's not just all the chase. So I think a lot of it's just up and downs of a young hitter, and especially one that it's very similar to Javi, where it's just going to be kind of streaky, and the league will figure some things out. But I think he's just also really not been doing some of the things that he was doing before and that he's good at. So I'm hopeful that we'll start to see him at least take advantage of pitches that he should be driving more in the final weeks. But it's a concern because that's one of the major bats you were counting on entering the second half of the season. And like the team's going to need him, Kyle Tucker, Seiya Suzuki, Michael Busch, and then at least a couple of the, Happ, Swanson, Nico types to be hitting if they're to make a deep run in October.
Yeah, it's like a double whammy really with him in August, because on the one hand, he hasn't hit for power, not even double power, like just no power, basically none at all, really. And then on top of that, one of his great strengths is his speed and his ability to, once he's on base, to steal bases. But if he can't get on base, obviously that's the whole that's how speedsters go to die, right? Like,
Right.
I mean, they just stop getting on base, and then their main skill is no longer useful, and he's been in that rut in August. And when you go by his month by month over the season, he's been pretty consistent. He maybe had a month where he's down a little bit. I don't know if it was in June or something, but then he came right back and had a great July. I mean, he hasn't had a month like this where he just bottomed out, and this was his absolute bottom out month.
Yeah.
And
Well,
they're not going
point,
anywhere.
Like
he does this for all September.
Right.
How about that?
Exactly. And to your point, he did have a slumpy week or two in July, but that felt more unlucky and he's still hitting the ball hard. And August, he just hasn't been hitting the ball. And a big issue when he's not hitting the ball is that he doesn't take his walks or anything. Whereas like Kyle Tucker's slump was infuriating too, but he was still getting on base like at a 350 clip because he still takes walks. Same with like Seiya has been walking. Seiya's been walking like I think twice as much in his slump than he was before it, which maybe he should be more aggressive again. I don't know, but
When they're not
the
calling
point
him
is
out
just
on ball 4, yeah,
exactly. But the point is just that those guys they'll still take walks and they'll still provide at least a skill,
I
whereas
mean, it's the
Pete is
Ian Happ thing
completely
too.
depending on
Ian Happ
hitting.
has done that a lot.
Right.
He's basically kind of, for his whole career, really kind of floated
Mhm.
on his ability to walk
Right.
when he's not hitting.
The moves that were made this week. We are at September 1st as of the time
Playoff
of this
push
recording.
moves.
We are rosters are expanding as we reach September, and the Cubs made a few moves since last we podcasted. The Cubs have signed Carlos Santana while also recalling Kevin Alcantara from AAA. They have optioned Owen Caissie back to Iowa. Let's start with you, Matt, on your thoughts about signing Carlos Santana, as well as why we're seeing Alcantara in lieu of Caissie at this point.
Yeah, so I think with Santana, this isn't going to excite people, I would say. It reminds me a little bit of kind of like Justin Turner, but as someone
Justin
that
Turner.
can, yeah, exactly.
Guys who used to be good.
Exactly.
That's what we love. We love to sign guys who used to be good.
So I knew that wasn't going to sound good, but he's kind of like Justin Turner, but he gives you a little more stability versus both right-handed and left-handed pitching, whereas Turner has actually been good this year versus lefties, but has been absolutely dreadful versus righties. Like Santana will at least give you a professional at bat, I think, versus both sides, and he'll take his walks. He strikes out under 20% of the time. So like he's kind of a fine bench bat that who can still play first base fine even at 39. So he's just I think basically their thinking would be that you could probably trust him to maybe get a hit versus right-handed pitching more than you would Turner, or you might even more than like Caissie today. I don't know if that's right. I'm just saying that I think they view it as like a veteran presence that can hit in the seventh or eighth, or maybe even give you a better chance to hit left-handed pitching than Bush would if they would prefer Santana out there over Turner. It's just veteran depth basically. Now as for like the Alcantara Caissie thing, I think it's that Kevin can two things. He's hit left-handed pitching really well this year. And I think they probably feel they have enough guys that can hit righties well with App and PCA, et cetera. And then so Alcantara's crushed lefties, and maybe you could put him in center field over PCA a couple of times if you wanted to, or late in the game or whatever. And then with Caissie, I think his game is a little more like limited in what he really brings to the table right now. I think that we saw what he's good at and what he can do, and maybe that we would see more of that if he got more opportunity. He can hit he can hit right-handed pitching. He can take his walks. He offers power that also plays through any condition in any park. That is one nice thing about him, I think, is he can actually hit a home run through the wind, where we've seen the wind be so annoying all season. So I get the frustration that some have had about doing this with him, but I think it's also just how they feel about their roster and playing time and where they can really improve things right now. Like they just had kind of stopped using him. I thought he deserved probably maybe one or two more starts over the last week, but I think their thinking with it too is that they're only going to go as far as Thea and Tucker and Half and Pete and those guys take them. So they're gonna, the only way to get out of the slump is to hit through it usually. So, or a day or two off, I think would help, like you talked about earlier with Pete, and help Tucker, and maybe you could help Saya more too. But I just think that they felt that Alcantara is a better fit for this roster realistically today. That doesn't mean he's a better player. That doesn't mean Caissie didn't deserve more playing time or opportunity. But I just think he was a tougher fit at this point.
So I thought the Carlos Santana move, and I'm probably in the minority here, was brilliant because the Cubs' concerts this year have really been bad. And if you can book Santana even for like one show, right? Like I think it's well worth it. And they've got some open dates in September when they're on the road. So that's my first thought. My second thought is, apart from the veteran leadership, which I won't underestimate, because you never know when Justin Turner might get laryngitis. We need a veteran who can get that veteran leadership. But a lot of Santana's strengths also seem to play along with Caissie's strengths, right? So, the right-handed hitting or right-hand, hitting right-handed pitchers, et cetera.
Right.
One thought would be to keep Caissie and not sign Santana, I suppose. I mean, now maybe they don't want two of their young players not playing much and riding the pines. I guess that might be it. Whereas they don't care about the development for Santana at this point of his career. Some people I saw had speculated that maybe he could help out at catcher. I don't know if that's really true or not.
Yeah, I don't know about that, but
any more than Kyle Schwarber is going to be your catcher, right? At this point, I think that should probably fail. But to the extent that they even think that's a possibility, that doesn't say much about Amaya's progress. Have you heard about? I haven't heard anything about that lately, which is concerning.
Yeah, I haven't heard anything about. I mean, I was just hoping he didn't have a torn ACL for the whole day after that happened. So the fact that he's even potentially in the mix at all would be good. But I don't know exactly where he's at.
But yeah, to the overall point about these decisions, I feel like the Cubs roster construction from a position player standpoint this year has been about as brutal as it possibly could be. The pieces just don't seem to fit. They never have really seemed to fit this year, and we suffered through having players on the team who, like, I mean, we don't have to go into them all, but guys who just weren't really major league baseball players at this point, the John Birdie, Brujan thing, but whatever. But they had to keep them because they couldn't find anybody else to play those positions in the trade deadline. They got cash. I don't know. It feels like the pieces have never really super fit. When your farm system strength is corner outfielders and you've got, I don't know, at least 3 corner outfielders, one having to play DH every day, all of whom have like no trade clauses, or your best player and Tucker. They put together. I mean, I like we've talked about this before. I love getting Kyle Tucker. I think he's a great player. That was, of all the great players you could get, that was kind of a position where you kind of scratch your head and you're like, wow, I thought like that would be a position where you wouldn't want to have a guy who was going to play every day. You'd almost rather have him at another position like third base or you name it, catcher, any other position, frankly, other than corner outfielder, given all the other pieces that we sort of had anticipated before the season started. You're like, okay, well, say I might DH, but that would open up room for Caissie or for Alcantara. I mean, all that was sort of the natural progression, and their development seems, I don't know if it's been stunted by not really playing this year at the major league level, but come next year, the Cubs really have some decisions to make, because you can't keep these guys in the minors till they're 26, like Matt Mervis, and then what?
Good news. They might have made the decision on Kyle Tucker already. So
yeah. Obviously, they know more than we do on that. And I would guess that there really is going to be a trade coming of some fashion this winter. I don't know who it's going to feature, but I think that they will get a starting pitcher this winter when there's potentially more teams that you can trade with, and these things usually end up being a little bit easier to do. I mean, they were able to trade with the Astros last offseason. That's the kind of thing that you can't get done at the trade deadline with another contender. So I would guess that there's finally a trade of some level, but they might need Owen Caissie. They might need Kevin Alcantara if they're not keeping Kyle Tucker. So we're all just speculating and have no idea. And they probably have a good idea on the realistic chances to keep Tucker by now, for sure.
And don't forget my most faithful words, Jeremy, on the podcast. I announced it before the All-Star game. I said, Seiya Suzuki's trade value will never be higher than it is today. And I think that has borne out throughout the course of this season and next. Not that they should have traded him. I wasn't suggesting they trade him. I was just saying that as a point of fact, that was the high watermark of his trade value as a Chicago Cub.
Well, let's look ahead as we turn the calendar page to September and we look at the final month of the regular season heading to the playoffs. Where do we stand in the standings right now? The Chicago Cubs are 6.5 back of the Milwaukee Brewers for the division. Both teams 5-5 in their last 10 games. In the wild card, the Cubs are holding down the top spot of the 3 wild card teams. And it's nice to see Cincinnati decide to go 2-8 over their last 10 and completely fall 4 games behind the Mets. The Mets competently delivered a 6-4 stretch while the Reds fell off. So now
it's sad that we have to worry about the Reds at all.
That's what was so annoying the last few weeks, was having to care about the Reds. And there's a series coming up at the end of September. I'm like, I do not want anything around that series to matter.
Yeah.
And so, glad to see that that's fallen out. So the Cubs do have a pretty good hold on at least one of the playoff spots.
Yeah, I think the team that's going to be the hardest to hold off is going to be the Padres. They upgraded their roster more than any other team in baseball at the deadline. And I don't know if you guys have checked out their upcoming schedule, but you'll feel worse about things when you do, because they play the Rockies 7 more times. They play the White Sox 3 times. They're hosting the Orioles. They're hosting the Orioles for the next 3 games. So they have, I think they're the kind of team that they're pretty top heavy talent wise now, and they might be able to bully over some of those bad teams, like the Cubs actually did this year against the Rockies and White Sox until yesterday. I mean, they only lost, I think, one or two of those games, something like that.
Well, but going 2-4 this week is bad, because these are the teams like the Giants and the Rockies that the Cubs need to beat for the very reasons you're explaining with the Padres' upcoming schedule. And here's the thing: if someone does beat the Cubs out for the final wild card spot, that is who will be hosting the Cubs in the first round of the playoffs. I personally don't want to go to San Diego to start a playoff series with their bullpen, frankly.
Right.
In particular, and the fact that they've got a couple, we talk about Kyle Tucker being like a extra special hitter. They've got a bunch of those guys in that lineup, and that is problematic.
Yeah, and a huge thing around the league this year that I think a lot of people haven't even noticed is most of these teams have really crazy home road splits this year. I feel like it's more extreme than it usually is. Like, there's a lot of good teams. Like I don't know if they still are, but last I checked, the Dodgers and the Padres were even slightly below 500 on the road, whereas they pummeled teams at home. The Cubs have been, like, I think, a couple of games over 500 on the road and have largely pummeled teams at home. But don't hold me to that this week. But just saying that there really has been a home field advantage around the league to this point this year. So, that only means so much in a postseason series where everybody's all in, and when you're talking especially a 3-game series. But you would much rather be at Wrigley Field than not be, if you were given the choice.
Absolutely.
I think the Cubs would, on paper, you'd have them as slight favorites probably in any series there, and you would have them as a slight to clear underdog if you had to go to, I don't know, San Diego or Los Angeles or, New York. Like, we know that those are not fun places for them to play ever. So you want to avoid that. So the best way you can do that, they have a slight lead over these teams right now, is take care of your own business. I know they still have a 3-game series versus the Mets toward the end of the year. And like these 2 series against the Braves, I kind of hate when they're playing the Braves, because they don't get Sale this week, but they might in the road series. I don't know, but they face Strider today, who's been pretty rough, but
he's been awful. But don't worry, he'll strike out 12 Cubs.
Exactly. Like, he's the kind of guy that could absolutely shut them down. So that worries me. And Acuna's back. Drake Baldwin, the rookie catcher, has been really good. So I mean, that is not like a bad team. How you think of a bad team? Their true talent is probably that of a top 10 team. So having 6 games against them right now, when Acuna and Sale and those guys were all just out for weeks and et cetera, like, that's not ideal. And they can beat you. So those are going to be tough games.
Although Austin
Um,
Riley's out, so you got that going for us,
yeah,
right?
Austin Riley's out. Yes, that's going to help for sure, at least. But these are not. I basically just the Braves are not what their record says. I think in reality. So those are going to be tough, and then you'll have, like you guys talked about, the Red series. You want that to not matter. You don't want the Reds to be fighting for their lives and thinking that they can sweep you and overtake you, because especially in that park in Cincinnati, 4-gamer, like that could be a really hard series. Especially because they have, their entire rotation is good, and that's another one of those dumb parks where just dumb crap happens, like Coors
That's a
Field.
series
So
where you want them to be mathematically eliminated and make the
right,
decision to shut down Ellie De La Cruz and some of their young pitchers,
exactly,
so as not to, put too much strain on them after a long season.
exactly. So it's like the Cubs just flat out have to play better baseball. I mean, that's all there is to it. Like Kyle Tucker hitting like he has is enormous. That was the one thing that you felt like if Kyle Tucker gets hot, this lineup can be really dangerous and they can hit playoff pitching and et cetera. And if he was what he's been doing, that's a big, big problem. But they need a couple of these other guys to get going, and you need Boyd to look more like he has. You need Palencia to look more like he had been. So, I mean, that's a lot of things that you need to start turning around.
And you need
The good
PCA to stop
news,
hitting like a middle reliever. I mean, that
exactly. The good news is, like you guys have said, they're 9 games up on the Reds or whatever for a playoff spot. So the odds are still very much in their favor, but you want the position to be as favorable as you can make it, because like it's a good team, but it's a flawed team, and you just want to have everything as much in their favor as they can, other than having to go up against everything on the road versus good teams, and when you really, really need all your stars to play like superstars. So just try to make the path more favorable is all.
Looking ahead to this week against the Braves, Colin Ray and Spencer Strider, Shota Imanaga, Joey Wentz, and then Cade Horton and Bryce Elder. Looking at the next 6 games at home, so 3 against Atlanta, 3 against a terrible Washington team as well. Let's do some predictions. Pat, we'll start with you for this week. Cubs need a big week.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to be wish casting here, but I think, I'm going to predict the Cubs finish 4-2, and I'm looking at the matchups they have against the Braves, and missing Sale I think is helpful, and I don't have, Strider and his poor performance so far aside, Wentz and Elder. I mean, there's nothing the Cubs are going to be facing this week that says you can't win these games. Washington, It looks like they're going to miss Gore, so that's great, right?
Yeah, he just got hurt.
Yeah, so the Cubs are really in a good spot against teams that have nothing to play for. And yes, Atlanta, I agree with Matt. Atlanta does have some individual talent like Olsen and Acuna and whatnot. Washington, whatever individual talent they have, those young guys, it feels like the year Castro and Rizzo had the down years. What was that, 2014 or something? They feel like they've regressed a little bit with some of their young players. But again, they have nothing to play for. Pitching's bad. The Cubs are at home. The weather's going to be beautiful. If your bats aren't going to come alive now, what's the point, right? Like, let's do this.
So 4-2 for you, Pat.
That's right.
Matt, what are you predicting?
I'm going to say 4-2 as well. If the Cubs had been, like, if they got another win or two on the road trip, I'd probably be riding a little higher on the vibes about the feel with it. But it's hard to for me to sit here and say that I expect them to win 5 of 6 right now against anyone. It's baseball, and
they're not playing well.
The Cubs been too inconsistent on a day-to-day. Yeah.
The Cubs have played 3 games over 500 since June 6th, right? That's over half the year. Like, they are not playing like a team that wins 5 out of 6. They're playing like a team that would probably go, 3-3 or 4-3 or something like that, week after week after week. That's how they've been playing.
Yeah. I will say that the first game, Ray versus Strider, that'll be kind of that's probably the hardest matchup on paper for the whole week. So we know that only means so much in baseball, but you won the first game.
Losing that game and then coming back and winning 4 out of 5.
Yeah, exactly. So if they won the first game, you start feeling a little bit better. But yeah, I mean, I'll take winning series right now, and if they do more than that, I'll be thrilled with that.
But boy, Matt,
All
you're right. That Colorado series, if they could have just pulled out the game yesterday on Sunday and gone 3-3, we could have laughed off the Giants sweep. The first sweep of the year, by the way, for the Cubs, which is impressive, right? But it just came at a bad time. Meanwhile, the Brewers, the Cubs could have been 5.5 back of the Brewers instead of 6.5. That the division now feels that much farther out, frankly, than it did.
Especially without any more head-to-heads. You just have to count
they took
on
2 out
other
of 3
teams
from
to
the
beat
Blue
them. It
Jays.
hasn't happened all year. So
They took 2 out of 3 from the Blue Jays in Toronto, right? And here we are taking 2 out of 3 from the Rockies in Colorado. That was a weekend series where we needed to make up ground, and we did not.
Right.
Well, you talked me out of 5-1. I was like, 5-1 week here. You've talked me down to 4-2.
I mean, that should be the expectation, but I'm just being realistic from what I've seen in the last 6 weeks or whatever. So, yeah.
All right. And the way we close the show every week is with a classic Cubs player profile where our guest gets to choose which former Cub we're going to profile this week. Matt, I'm going to put you on the clock here. I've put the already taken players in the chat. This past week, we went to our patrons over at patreon.com/Wrigleyville Nation to make the pick for us, and they chose Rick Monday, who we will hear all about here shortly. After that, we will have Matt provide us with his pick. So you think about that. Pat, tell us a little bit about Rick Monday.
Well, sure. Rick Monday was born in 1945. He'll be 80 years old later this year in Batesville, Arkansas. He ended up playing high school baseball in Santa Monica and then went on to Arizona State University, where he was not only a good player, but a great player. He won the national championship, college championship, and was college player of the year. Played on the same team with Duffy Dyer and Sal Bando, 2 catchers that would become pretty famous with the Pirates and the A's later on. And there was a freshman on his team by the name of Reggie Jackson. But back in those days, freshmen weren't allowed to play as freshmen in college athletics. So Reggie had to sort of sit there and watch Rick Monday be the hero. And then, of course, Reggie took over for him when he left and did the same thing. But there are 3 main things that Rick Monday is remembered for. The first thing that he's famous for is that in 1965, before our births, he was chosen as the first player ever taken in the Major League Baseball amateur draft. That was the first year they had the draft, and he was taken by the Kansas City Athletics, just to show you how long ago that was. That was the same year that the Cubs, of course, with the 6th pick in the first draft ever, took none other than Rick James, friend of Carlos Santana. No, Rick James pitched 3 games as a 19-year-old for the Cubs and never pitched again in the majors. So a typical Cubs first-round pick. They started from the very beginning when it came to interesting picks. Meanwhile, Monday is the overall first pick, went to Kansas City, played in Kansas City for them, was on the all-rookie team, and then they promptly moved to Oakland. So he spent the first 5 years of his career with the A's in 1966 to 71. And, he was pretty good. Like in 1968, he was an all-star.
Was he the first? Did you mention he was the first MLB draft pick ever?
Yes, ever. This was the first draft ever. 1955. Yeah. Rick James was the 6th pick ever in the Major League Baseball first draft. So in 1968, at a fairly tender age, Monday was an all-star. He had a WAR. His average WAR with the A's back in those days was 3.5 to 4. I mean, he was a dare I say, a little bit better than Ian Happ type of player for them. And with the A's on the verge of winning 3 consecutive World Series, which they're about to do, they traded Rick Monday to the Cubs so they could get the final piece of the puzzle, which for them was none other than Kenny Holtzman, who was a pitcher for the Cubs, who had run afoul of Leo DeRocher, the manager, which is not hard to do. So they didn't get along. The Cubs had another young pitcher they thought would take Holtzman's place in the rotation by the name of Bert Hooton, who also would go on to go to the World Series with the Dodgers. not with the Cubs. And so Monday got to spend the 1972 through 76 campaigns with the Cubs, having the best years of his career while his former team, the Oakland A's, won 3 consecutive World Series. So I'm sure it was worth it. With the Cubs, he played center field. He's referred to as the best center fielder the Cubs had in 50 years. All over as an all-around player.
It's crazy.
Yeah, I know. He finished 18th in the MVP voting in 1976 with a 4.4 WAR. Hit 32 homers, which doesn't sound that impressive, but it was third in the National League back then. That was a lot. 107 runs. He batted leadoff that year. So another, and finished third in the league in home runs. Interesting. So the Cubs were the original Kyle Schwarber idea, right? Of batting.
Yeah, I was going to say back then that was especially not how you viewed a leadoff hitter.
Yeah. So during the course of his career with the Cubs, he was really good. He had 11 WAR. He was above average to very good player every single year with OPS plus. He was on some bad teams, but he had an 826 OPS at a time when hitting was not what it is now. Unfortunately for him, in 72, when he first got to the Cubs, they finished in second place. They actually had a really good year. And by 73, they'd fallen to fifth place. And then by 74, sixth place. 75, they rebounded. They were tied for fifth. And then in 76, his last year, they were in fourth place. So the Cubs were in that transitional period where Santo and Williams and Banks were all leaving. Joe Pepitone voluntarily retired temporarily. And the Cubs were transitioning to the newer era, which was Rick Monday, Jose Cardinal, who had come over, Rick Russell, who they brought up from, as we talked about him a couple weeks ago, young pitcher. But, Fergie was leaving. I mean, so it was kind of this weird phase where he played with a lot of those guys, played with all those guys at the beginning of his career with the Cubs, especially in that 72 year. But then year by year, as they were dealt and traded off or retired, the Cubs got worse and worse and didn't replace them with a lot of high-priced veterans. So that was his Cubs career, with one other exception. And this is the second thing he's famous for, and maybe even more famous for being the first player overall taken in the draft. You may recall, Jeremy, on April 26th of 1976, the Cubs were playing in Los Angeles against the Dodgers.
April 25th.
25th,
exactly.
25th,
Yeah.
25th, not 26th. Can't read my own handwriting. April 25th, and Cardinal was in the outfield, and Monday was in the outfield. And Monday saw 2 people run onto the field. Turns out it was a father and his 11-year-old son, but 2 people ran on the field, and they had a.
This was not on the south side. This was in Los Angeles.
This is in the west side of Los Angeles.
Sorry. But different father and son combination.
Yeah, right. Not the ones that, famously ran on the field against the Whites. Yeah. So he saw them pull out an object, and then it looked like they had gasoline or something. And he's like, well, no good is going to come out of this. So he runs up, and it was an American flag, as it turns out. And he just happened to get there just in time, and he snatched the flag out of their hands and ran over to the sideline, or to the foul line, and handed it to one of the Dodgers bullpen guys, pitchers. And the guys were arrested on the spot. And it came at a weird time because it was 1976. It was the bicentennial. That was, the country was getting ready for this 200-year anniversary. The quarters all had, were different. Everybody had the red, white, and blue. It was like this kind of the post-Vietnam era and post-Watergate and 200-year anniversary. So there was a lot of emotions in the air, a lot of feelings about that. But one of the things that I think people presume is that these guys were burning the flag because they were either protesting the war or something like that. Turns out that was not the case. Originally, and the story that I had always remembered was that the dad and the son was 11, so he was just, with his dad, but the dad's was doing it because he was, he wanted, and I guess he had made some comment about how he wanted to protest the treatment of Native Americans in the United States. So I thought that was the deal. Although after doing more research in preparation for this, I've also heard there's an alternate story, and I don't know which one is real, and I don't think anybody does, because apparently neither the father nor son were ever interviewed at all after this. So the second story is that, and it is true that the father and son were in Missouri and drove all the way to Los Angeles. And the story was that he was protesting the fact that his wife had been involuntarily imprisoned in a mental health facility. And he thought that that was unfair and wanted to to publicly protest that. Kind of bizarre. That is what he said. I mean, that is another stated story. So, I had a third theory, which was this also happened to be the 100th anniversary of the Cubs' first game. So maybe I thought he was just an angry Dodgers fan who was upset that the Cubs had a longer, 10-year as a major league team than the Dodgers did. But I don't think that one went anywhere. So we don't know why it happened necessarily. All we know is that it became famous, and there was a photo taken of Rick Monday running off the field with the flag.
Yeah, it's very famous. I mean, that's
very famous.
Everybody's seen that. Yeah.
The Illinois legislature declared it Rick Monday Day, the following Monday, and they also he was made the Grand Marshal of Chicago's Flag Day Parade. So he's traded off of that for a long time in terms of. He gets interviewed about it a lot and has talked about it a lot since then. But that was kind of a big deal. It was national news. We still don't know why it happened. That'd be a good research topic for somebody to get to the bottom of it. I don't know if the 11-year-old is still around, or somebody around could possibly explain what was going on. But that happened in his final year with the Cubs in 1976. And then on January 11th, the trade that was heard around the world, Rick Monday was traded to the Los Angeles Dodgers, the team he had just been grabbing flags out of, in what was still considered, I think, one of the most lopsided trades in Major League Baseball history. It was Rick Monday and Mike Garman were traded to the Chicago Cubs for Ivan DeJesus and none other than Bill Buckner, who went on to lead what I would consider a Hall of Fame level career, and was going to be and turned out to be a star for the Cubs, which I'm sure was difficult for Rick Monday because he had been so good for the Cubs for so long, but he was 31 years old. The Cubs were looking to get younger, and it made sense for them. So Monday finished off his career with the Dodgers from 77 to 1984. He was an all-star in 1978, but he never had more than 400 plate appearances for the rest of his career with the Dodgers. They had a pretty good team back then, and they had Dusty Baker and Reggie Smith and Steve Garvey and a lot of other guys fighting for playing time. So he did play, but he did not play you could call it quasi full-time, but not really every day from then on. He did, however, get to go to the 1981 World Series, and they won it. And he get to play in the playoffs in 1983 and was on the pennant team that lost for the Dodgers. So he did make the playoffs. But the third thing he's most famous for is in that 1981 postseason, and I believe that was a strike year, wasn't it? I think it was the original strike year, but it must have been, right? Or no, I guess that might have been the next year. I remember they were playing the Montreal Expos.
No, you're right. The players went on strike June 12th through July 31st of 81.
So this was the 81 Expos, who were stacked. That's a team that had Steve Rogers and Andre Dawson and Ellis Valentine and Lance Parrish and numerous good players. They might have Tim Foley then, I can't remember. They were really good, and so he was on the team that played them. And in Game 5 of that series, which was the final game, he hit the game-winning home run off Steve Rogers in the ninth inning. It was a walk-off home run that sent the Dodgers to the World Series. Shot heard around the world that day. And so he single-handedly was able to help the Dodgers win a World Series, which made up for, them having to lose Bill Buckner, I suppose. It was known that day was known in Montreal as Blue Monday. A lot of play. When your name's Monday, there's a lot they can do with it. And the Expos were so devastated from that game, as I recall, that they never recovered. They ended up having to move to Washington, D.C. So that was the end of the Expos dynasty. In his 19-year career, Rick Monday had 33.1 WAR, very respectable, 1,619 hits, 241 home runs, of which 106 were as a Cub. While he played 8 years with the Dodgers and 6 with the A's, his 5 years with the Cubs were his best years in terms of performance. During those years, he had his high, his best sort of Ian Happ-like years, if not a little bit better than Ian Happ for the entire stretch. He went on to become a broadcaster for the Dodgers, and both TV and radio. I remember listening to him when he was a broadcaster with them. One fun fact, versus Tom Seaver, Hall of Fame pitcher. Rick Monday went 30 for 86 for a 349 batting average and 11 home runs, which is the most ever by any player against Tom Terrific. So he had Tom Seaver's number. That's all we know. But an interesting career for Rick Monday. He had a lot of famous things that he did. And one of them actually was an on the field, during the gameplay event, which was that home run to send the Dodgers to the World Series. So that's Rick Monday.
Awesome.
Very popular player in Chicago, by the way, too. I have to add.
Oh, very much so. Yeah.
He was a huge fan favorite.
All right, Matt, who are we going to be previewing next week?
Well, the one that I'm going to suggest is not nearly as detailed biography profile wise as Rick Monday, but with the down the stretch of the season, and after they just added a veteran kind of bat like Carlos Santana and the postseason on the way, I'll recommend Randall Simon.
I was going to say it's got to be I almost mentioned Randall Simon when you brought up Santana at the beginning of the conversation, so I'm glad I did.
Yeah,
that'll be one of Jeremy's all-time favorites.
Yeah, so what a great pick. Like he was one of those. Well, I'll talk about it next week. I'll save my enthusiasm for next week. Great pick.
People remember the Kenny Lofton, Ramos Ramirez, but they don't remember getting Randall Simon too.
No, and it came like a little bit after that. It wasn't part of that actual deal, but it came right after that. And we'll talk about him beating up the sausages in Milwaukee as well. So, Matt, always a great time catching up and talking Cubs. You are in 8th place when it comes to guests appearances on the show. This was your 9th appearance on the show. So,
who's first?
I'm afraid when you tell people that, they'll be like, "Well, I've done enough now. I don't want to come back anymore."
First is Matt Trueblood. He's got 34 appearances.
Wow.
He's Jared Willis and Evan Altman are right behind him. But you have you're about to hit double digits here after your 9th appearance. 8th all time on the list.
You should see the smoking jacket you get for double digits. Nice.
Well, I have fun every time, so I really appreciate you guys having me on.
And we appreciate your commentary on social media too. Always fun to. I can usually tell how the Cubs are doing based on your very level responses to what's going on. when most of the people replying to you are losing their minds.
Yeah, I always get. I mean, we're all fans, but sometimes they can just get a little extreme. I just wonder how some people follow a sport like this over 162 games if you're just gonna lose your mind over every single loss. But I get it. It's frustrating. And when
they treat it like college football, they think that every loss is
exactly. It's exactly. It's not football. So sometimes you just have to take a step back. I get frustrated as heck too. But yeah.
Please remind our listeners how they can follow you on the social media platforms for both Cubs and Bears coverage.
Yeah, you can follow me for Cubs tweets at the blog finds, and for Bears tweets at the Bear Necess. My blog way back when was the Bear Necessities, and I don't have enough space on the handle character thing to do that. So yeah.
Always a great time catching up with you. Thanks for taking time with us, and make sure you're following us on all of our social media platforms as well at Wrigleyville Nat. And the video version of the video version of the podcast is available on YouTube. Go to youtube.com, search for Wrigleyville Nation Podcast. If you want to support the show, even if you don't consume your podcast via the video form, go over there, give us a like, subscribe. It helps us work the algorithm so that other Cub fans can find the show. And if you do want to support the show financially, there's 2 ways to do that. One is to be a patron over at patreon.com/Wrigleyville Nation. That's where we keep the show ad-free every single week because the patrons donate. Every little bit helps, and every little bit goes into the show to help us remain ad-free, pay for our hosting, get Pat a mic cable. All the stuff we need to do comes from there. And the other way to support the show financially is to go to the store and buy a shirt, a hat, a mug. We've got all kinds of bags. We've got all kinds of stuff over at the store. So go to WrigleyvilleNation.com, click the store button at the top. Go to any of our social media profiles, click the link tree at the top. There's a link right there to the store. grab yourself a shirt, many designs, and that you can put on shirts, hats, etc. So those are the two best ways to support the show. If you can't support it financially in these times, again, the subscription over at YouTube, or just telling your Cub fan friends about the show. Show them how to subscribe to the podcast as we are on the home stretch, the final month of the season, as we will roll into the postseason at this pace, and hopefully have lots more shows to come. So make sure that you are staying subscribed on all of the platforms. And with that, we're going to wrap it up and call it a podcast. Pat, thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Jeremy.
Thanks again, everyone, for listening, and we'll talk to you again next time.